we finish off with A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. In which case, there's a troubled teen who is having these dreams that are bothering her. She gets attacked by Freddy. It looks like a suicide attempt, so she's sent to a sleep deprivation institute. Then there's other teens who are having the same issues with Freddy. And then Nancy returns, and she was in the second movie, so she comes back in this one, and she tries to help the kids with somewhat unconventional means. They have to find some dream powers to try to fight Freddy off before they're killed off one by one. And there's also another doctor who meets a mysterious nun who seems to know more about Freddy than any living person could. Yet Dream Warriors is, for a long time, it's been my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street sequel. I think it does a lot of things right. I think it's a really fun movie. And it's not perfect. The original is definitely better. This one has sometimes a bit of a strong fantasy feel, without the dream powers. Some of them are sort of ridiculous, but it's a really. I do find it a really fun movie, and it's not a movie that I have that many complaints about. So I'm sort of curious. I'm not sure really what you think about this one. So what are your opinions?
This is actually, to be honest, I don't watch the Nightmare on Elm Street sequels a whole lot. Like, I've probably seen part 3 maybe 3 times in my life, maybe. I don't know. But, and that's pretty much goes the same for most of the sequels. I mean, if you go back to our review of the original movie, you'd know that, that's one of those movies I saw when I was quite young. And, I found Freddy really scary in that movie, as a lot of kids would when they first see that movie back in the day. So that same feeling from that movie is not here with any of the sequels, to be honest. Maybe a little bit in part 2, but we know part 2's got its own issues. And yeah, I just found like that same feeling's not here with this one. And I know a lot of people actually out there, they swear by this movie. It's like the best sequel at the very least. They make that claim.
I mean, there's really no competition.
Well,
so.
I guess depends who you ask. To me, I don't have a problem with watching part 4 over this one. I'm not saying part 4 is better, but I'm just saying I don't feel like there's much of a difference between them, in terms of how much I enjoy them. To be honest, I haven't seen part 5 in a long time, and I know that's one that people gripe a bit about. I have seen part 6 quite a few times. Yeah, that one's not that great, but it's certainly not as good as part 3 or 4 from what I remember. But
and the other, it's not as bad as part 5, so
yeah.
There you go.
But anyways, like, I don't think there's a sequel to Nightmare on Elm Street that I would rate probably more than a 7.
I think New Nightmare is probably deserving of at least a 7.5.
Yeah, New Nightmares might be. I know it's probably the most interesting idea from all the sequels, just because it tries to do something a bit different. And actually, New Nightmare, I won't talk much about that because we'll give it its own review at some point, but I think that's the one movie where I actually started to find Freddy a little more scary again. But in any case, this movie, part 3, like you said, I think a part of the reason why this doesn't quite take it over the top for me is the superpowers in the dreams. I think that was just a stupid addition to this movie. It just makes it too campy. A guy turns into Harry Potter, basically. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, for me, I want to make it a bit cheesy, but I guess maybe because I saw this one when I was younger. I mean, maybe you did too. It never really bothered me. Like, the whole, I mean, if you're going to be having a situation where you can pull other people into your dreams, you might as well give them powers. I mean, why not? And it's not like for half of the time it even mattered. Like, the only power that was even all that significant, I guess you could say Kincaid's strength helped them climb down at the end, but it was guys shouting that broke the mirrors, which is useful, which is not much of a power. But I guess even though this went a bit goofier with Freddy's personality than the previous movies, it's still I still think it's more of a fun Goofy as opposed to like a really ridiculous Goofy like you get in movies 4 and 5, which I mean 4 is not like a terrible movie, but some of the Friday scenes in number 4 just sort of cringy. I mean this one you get the classic "Welcome to Primetime, Bitch," which is I mean who doesn't like this scene? Or maybe you don't like it, but I think it's a pretty good scene.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
it's fine. It's just I just don't. Yeah, I just don't feel like there's really much in this movie that's all that much better than in part 4 or 2 or yeah.
well, I'd say, and that's another thing I actually want to mention. I rate this quite a bit higher than Part 4, mainly because I think it's really fun to have Nancy come back. And even though John Saxon may not have done that much in this movie, I did like seeing John Saxon come back. I thought it was sort of interesting seeing that he's just like a down and out guy at a bar, and that's where his life has come to, since the events of the first movie. So I think the sort of continuity it has helps a little, even if you don't necessarily like where it takes the characters.
Yeah, sort of unlikable, at least from my perspective. Who wanted to see her dad turn into that douche?
Well, it's not like he wasn't a bit of a dig in the original movie. I mean, like, I mean, sure he had his reasons, but like, refusing to even listen to his daughter, like some of the, I don't know, like, it's not like he was perfect back then. He was better than the mother, if only because he wasn't like a drunk who pit bars on her windows. But um, two other things I wanted to mention. I'm sorry, three other things I wanted to mention. One, I think the opening to this movie is pretty fantastic. We have the main character making a paper mache house. Then she has sort of a creepy dream sequence. And if there's any point in this movie where Freddy seems a little bit more threatening, I think it would probably be this opening dream. He sort of chases her around a bit. It's nothing like amazing or anything you haven't seen before, but I think it's pretty good opening. Um, Two, I think the marionette kill with Freddy sort of controls this kid with the ligaments torn from his arms and legs. It doesn't always look great, but I think it looks cool enough. It's original, and that scene where he's like his face is in the sky and cuts the ligaments. I think it's a pretty quality scene. And lastly, the Dream Warrior song. Even though I know that the band doesn't even like playing it, I think it's a pretty fun song. And it's probably one of the better made for movies horror themes out there, so I can dig it.
To be honest, I've never been a fan of. I've never really gotten into having, at least from in the 80s, having metal music in horror movies. It just. There's something about it just doesn't hit with me. I mean, there's movies later on, in the 2000s and stuff, which can play heavy music in a horror movie and it's fine. Yeah, in the 80s didn't do too much for me, whether it's Nightmare on Elm Street or Hellraiser. I mean, the songs themselves, yeah, they're okay. I mean, I wouldn't go out of my way to listen to them, but I don't know. I guess maybe it's more the 80s metal is not really exactly my preferred music.
Well, at the very least, it's better than Madden.
I don't think so.
So there is actually one other thing I wanted to mention. I'm just trying to think of anything else I want to hit on. This sort of like an origin story given for Friday. I guess a little deeper origin than what we got in the first movie. From the aforementioned mysterious nun, who communicates with one of the characters. And I think it's pretty decent. I feel like the whole thing feels sometimes maybe a little out of place. Like all this mysterious woman's randomly telling this guy like about how Freddy was born. Like I'm not sure if it really matters that much. But I did like the junkyard scene, and even though it looks sort of corny nowadays, I did like the skeleton. I thought it was fine. That roaring was a bit ridiculous, but I sort of like it. And a lot of this, again, it might have to do more with the fact that I've seen this movie quite a few times. I'll just throw the number like maybe 5, 6, 7 times. It's a movie I always enjoy watching. So there's certainly a bit maybe nostalgic value to it. But I think it's a lot of decent things here. So that's probably where a lot of my feelings are coming from.
Hmm. I think the other thing with Freddy is that I prefer Freddy just to be himself rather than turn into all these like monsterish versions of whatever. And
I've seen it like the snake.
yeah, I mean it's fine. I mean I just think Freddy himself is more interesting than that. I mean we get to see a lot more of him in the original movie just as himself. Like he's not out there turning into these snakes or monsters, whatever. And it's just, yeah, I just don't like it going in that campy direction, I guess.
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't really fix itself into like New Nightmare. Like I think actually the sixth movie is enjoyable in its own way, but let me talk about again very campy movie. But this one, I'll just go ahead and rate it. Um, I personally find it a pretty enjoyable movie. I always have, and I probably always will. I never have a bad time with it, even if it's a bit corny. Um, I don't know. I'm cool with it. So I'm going to give this one an 8.5, which is quite a bit above average. And just to just because I'm an extremist, I'm going to move this up to a 9 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed, and um, it's it's easily, in my opinion, the best sequel to the first movie, and even if you count New Nightmare and other related movies, I don't think anything comes that close. So, a 9 out of 10 is might be a bit high, but I'm going to stick with it.
And it's enjoyable. It's got Freddy in it, so it's there's things to have fun with. But for me personally, yeah, just I'm just one of those guys in this particular series. The original, nothing comes close to it. While the sequels are watchable, they're fun to a point. Yeah, it just I don't know. Anyways, I'm giving this a 7 out of 10. I almost want to bump it up a little bit just because of the nurse scene, because I'd enjoy being her patient. But yeah, I think with horror movie sequels, especially for these bigger franchises, what filmmakers need to do, at least moving forward from this point in time, if you really want to know how to make a really good sequel, what you need to do, you need to gather up the best scientists and whatever people you can find. You need to have them go out and buy a copy of Child's Play 2, DVD, Blu-ray, whatever. Take it back to your lab and pick that movie apart, because that is the quintessential, most beautiful sequel in horror movie history. Am I right?
I don't have a list in front of me, but yeah, it's a very solid sequel.
Get the fuck out.
I mean, hey, I gave it almost the same rating as the first movie. I think both are fantastic. So, I'll disagree with you.